What follows are my initial thoughts and reactions to this book of the Bible. I have not done any outside research regarding the more challenging or problematic passages of Christian scripture. Therefore, do not take whatever criticisms I may make in this video as my final word on the passage or verse in question. I am very likely going to be doing a Bible Revisited series addressing my different issues with the Bible, book by book, after conducting ample outside research. So now, without further ado, let's jump into the review. So 1 Corinthians is obviously a book in the Bible, in the New Testament, believed to be written by the Apostle Paul, and it is a letter. It's one of Paul's letters to the Corinthians, giving them guidance, advice, and spiritual leadership, and instructions on following the path, an example of Jesus, basically. And I'll just get right to it as far as my overall thoughts of the book. I really enjoyed it. There's some really great stuff in this book. Like, the Corinthians has my favorite, I think it's probably my favorite passage in the entire Bible. It's in 1 Corinthians, and there's a bunch of just great stuff in here. There's also some stuff that I took issue with. I was like, how do people explain that this is in here? But overall, I thought the first Corinthians was pretty amazing. If you especially take into context, the time this was written, this was revolutionary, like most of the Bible. It was a revolutionary as far as just what it says about love and about treating people and about evangelism and about just being a good human. It's really, really, really impressive, and it's beautiful. And overall, I really, really loved the 1 Corinthians. I don't know how I compare it to the other books of the Bible that I've read and reviewed in this series. It's definitely not my favorite, but it definitely has, like I said, portions of it that are just my favorite. Anyways, now I'd like to jump into the certain passages that I really loved in the 1 Corinthians, and the certain passages I had, some difficulties with, some problems with, and I want to discuss, analyze, and get to the bottom of these different passages and hear what you think about them. So the first passage I thought was really interesting, and would be interesting to talk about, is 1 Corinthians 3, verse 18 to 20, and I'm just going to read it. Do not deceive yourselves. If anyone of you thinks he is wise by the standards of this age, he should become a fool, so that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight. As it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows that the thoughts of the wise are futile. I find this passage very, very interesting because it's almost acting as if being wise is bad. I don't think that's what it's saying, though. I think what it's saying is there are often very, very clever people, very high IQs, very intelligent people who, because they're so intelligent and are for all intents and purposes very wise, they can get, their ego can get blown out of proportion because they are just so much smarter and quote-unquote wiser than others. And I think we can see this, you look on these big intellectuals or whatever, they don't understand people that are different than them because they just don't want to walk in their shoes. And so that's why we get these coastal, the out of touch political elitists or the out of touch Hollywood elitists. I think that's kind of what this passage is almost talking about. It's talking about people that are clearly very intelligent, very talented, and clearly, very, very, could be very, very wise, but they let their intelligence and advantages in life get the better of them to where they're stupid and to where they're futile and to where they're foolish. They're foolish to God because they think that they are God. They think that they know better than everyone else. They think they know better than God and religion and just what they think they know better than anyone and everyone who challenges them. And I don't know, I kind of think that's what this passage is almost talking about when it talks about the thoughts of the wise are futile and the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God's sight. Obviously, it talks about great wise men. The Bible talks about great wise men and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's saying, don't be wise, but I think it's saying that those who are often called quote unquote wise can prove to be very unwise because they let themselves get out of control. The next passage I found really, really great and very clarifying is 1 Corinthians chapter 5, 9 through to 11. I have written you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people, not at all meaning the people of this world who are immoral or the greedy and swindlers or idolaters. In that case, you would have to leave this world. But now I am writing you that you must not associate with anyone who calls himself a brother, but who is sexually immoral or greedy, an idolater or a slanderer, a drunkard or a swindler. With such a man do not even eat. I find this passage really great because there's a lot of, everybody knows Christians like this. They just won't hang out with people that disagree with them. They'll be like, no, he smokes weed, or they'll be like, oh, he's not a Christian, so no, I'm not going to hang out with him unless he converts, unless he can, and those people are ridiculous because clearly what it says here in 1 Corinthians is totally hang out with people who are different than you and who are even engaging in behavior that's not deemed as right, moral behavior. But don't hang out with anyone who purports to be this wise, good, moral human being, but who's not at all. Like, don't hang out with someone who's like, man, just don't ever have sex before you're married. And then they turn out, and then they turn around, and it turns out that they're having sex with 5 different people and have been for years. Don't be friends with people that are like that, or don't be friends who are people like, oh man, drinking's stupid, don't ever do it, I never do it, and then they turn around and they get blackout drunk. In other words, don't hang out with total freaking hypocrites. Yeah, I think it's really great because it says don't shy away from hanging out. I like going to parties. I want to go. And yeah, there's a lot of people, some of them are making bad decisions. Some of them are just having a good time. And, those people who are those people who are taking the party a little too hard, having too much fun, you don't want to just never be around those people because those people could need your help. And I think that's what this is saying here. But don't be around the people that, lie about who they are, basically. Another passage I find really, really great is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1 through 9. And I think I'm going to read the whole thing because I think I don't know, I wasn't expecting, like how in a lot of people are like, oh, well, you must get married. You must get married. In more religious circles. And it's like, why? Why must you? Now, I want to get married, but I don't look down on people that, don't want to get married. It's a lot of people change their minds, especially when they're young. They're like, oh, I'm never getting married, and then they get married. But, I've always wondered why there's this stigma of like, oh, you're not married? What are you doing with your life? And I think this passage is very clarifying. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Now, for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to marry. But since there is so much immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife. Do not deprive each other except by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all men were as I am. Paul was unmarried. But each man has his own gift from God. One has this gift, one has that. Now to the unmarried and the widows I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried, as I am. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. I think that's really nuanced. He's like, hey, if you want to get married, get married. If you don't want to get married, don't get married. It's okay. And I think also there at the end, that part where it says, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. I think the Catholic Church should, read that part of the Bible sometime. because with, all the Catholic priests and affairs and even pedophilia kind of stuff, the oath of like, oh, I am just going to decide as a young man to never get married, and I'm going to make an oath that if I break it, then I'm out of the church, then, I can't preach. It's like, what? It literally says, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. I feel like there are so many Catholic priests that are burning with passion. And it's like, why? Why would you sign up for that oath? Why does the Catholic Church have this as a thing? As like you must swear an oath of celibacy. Why? I mean, I know that some people say it's like because they want to be more Christ-like, because Jesus never married. He never said that people who preach the gospel should not get married. So why is it that the Catholic Church is like, people who preach the gospel should not get married? It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I think the Protestant or non-denominational people have it more right about the whole marriage and preaching thing. Every pastor I've ever seen preach in church at a more Protestant church, they have a wife, and they seem to be much happier and much more balanced for preaching on matters such as marriage. And I think it helps to be married to give counsel on marriage. So whenever I see a Catholic priest counseling on marriage, I'm like, do you actually know what you're talking about? Now, I'm not going to read this passage because it's a whole chapter, but chapter 9 of 1 Corinthians is really, really great. It's basically Paul talking about the sacrifices that he and the other apostles are making, have made, and how they will do anything to share the gospel no matter what. They will not ask for anything, even though it would be perfectly within their right to demand payment for their services and for their preaching, but they don't take anything. And I just think it's really, really powerful. And Paul is like a great writer. It's just, very well articulated. Really, really was a fan of chapter 9 for sure. Now, here is my favorite chapter, I think, in the entire Bible. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I will read this thing in its entirety because it is amazing. Like it is, when you talk about the Bible having revolutionary stuff in it, this is revolutionary. This changed the world. This is continuing to change the world. And I think by the end of me reading this chapter, you'll be like, yeah, Carter's right. That's pretty amazing. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. If you heard that and you're like, that's not beautiful, then you're wrong. You're just wrong. But no, like, it's seriously like that. I've never read a better description of what love is in my entire life. Like, it's so beautifully put. It's so perfectly put. And then also the part there where it's like basically talking about, we now see but through like a mirror dimly. That's so true. Like we don't know exactly what's happening on the other side of what is death. We don't know much. We only see through a mirror dimly. And but then we will see face to face. So beautifully put, and it's just like I said, the way it illustrates what love is and how powerful love is. I've never read anything as powerful as this on the subject of love. Now, the last passage I thought that was really interesting to talk about and I wanted to touch on is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 32. It kind of makes a very succinct point about something very, very serious. And I'm just going to read it right now. If I fought wild beasts in Ephesus for merely human reasons, what have I gained? If the dead are not raised, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. I think that's a really good point because, if there is no supernatural reality, if there is no God, if there is no transcendent morality, if there is no life after death, and we're doing everything for human reasons, then what we're doing is we're just interacting with other balls of meat that are interacting with other balls of meat, and we are just animals, and therefore nothing we do matters. So why not, if that is reality, then why not just eat and drink and be merry, for tomorrow we really die? And I think that's a really good question for the atheist in the room. And, this whole series I'm doing is not just for Christians. It's for everybody. I'm going to read the Gita. I'm going to read the Quran. And so, this is all about, I think, I really do believe that there is something after us. And I think life after death, Paul makes a point. If there is no life after death, then why not? Just do whatever the hell you want. Why try to build a family? Why try to do good for others? Like, why? And you could say, well, just for the sake of doing it, but then what is good? Like, because if there's no transcendent morality and then there is no such thing as good or evil, then it's just a societal construct. So why do anything? I don't know. I think it's the point he made there was just a couple lines, but I think it was a very significant point. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts on the book of the Bible known as 1 Corinthians. I highly recommend it, and please let me know in the comment section below whether or not you have read 1 Corinthians and what you thought of it. And as always, if you liked this video, please like it and subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and never forget to